Welcome back, sci-fi fans, to another episode of the Science Fictionary podcast. I'm Andrew. I'm here, as always, with Marisha and our special guest to talk some more Rings of Power. We've got Dragon Buddy and Lunar Girl.
Hi,
Hooray! Our resident friends who also make our show.
Yes.
So it's been really, really great having y'all for all these episodes for
definitely.
Rings of Power. And
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
I'm so excited to go on this journey with somebody.
Well, honestly,
Yeah.
it's just Kelly and I that talk about it. I don't have friends that are all about it. It's our network is kind of like me.
yeah.
So
I was working. I was on a movie when the first like 2 episodes came out,
Mhm.
and every time I would like start to be, I'm like, "You're a nerd." I was like, "Hey, you watch Rings of Power?" No, I don't have time. So I'm like, "Come on, somebody, one of you nerdy people has got to actually have something to say about this." No
Right.
one did. One of them
Even the props guys?
doesn't think that he didn't think that high fantasy belonged on film. It just belongs on the written page
No.
where you can just envision it. And I was like, moving on.
yeah, never mind then.
It's an interesting take for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like
Now,
think
I
it
will
was-
say I don't think that anything on film has ever surpassed fantasy on the written page.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's true.
But I don't think that it doesn't belong. It's just harder to translate to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was so well translated, though.
All right. So technically, we are supposed to be doing episodes 7 and 8 here, so it's going to be kind of hard to
Yeah, separate the two.
separate the two, and of course, like it's going to be really hard to not just be like 90% episode 8 here because
Can we just
Yeah.
squish them together and talk about both of them?
well,
at
no,
the
that's
same
that's
time?
definitely what we're going to do. We're just going to talk about. We're really because this was the finale. Like we just kind of want to talk about how we wrapped it up and kind of how we feel about it as a whole now. So
And
Yeah.
if you have
Right.
not seen it, leave.
yeah, no, we're fixing to spoil all the
All
Yeah.
the things.
All the
Oh.
spoilers, but
I
we're
told
so
my kids.
excited.
I said, don't sit in the next room and listen, because they usually sit in the next room and listen to what we're podcasting. I said, don't
Right.
do that, or you're going to get
Mhm.
totally spoiled on the end of this. And so,
Mhm. Exactly.
True.
watching TV instead.
But if you
All right.
have seen it, this is the show
Yes.
for you.
This is the place to be.
Right.
Even though Twitter did not automatically generate that thing that you told me it would.
Well, we missed last week. We had
No water.
we
Yeah.
were in New Orleans, and then we had no water.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
So we did miss
And then
last
we had
week.
no
so-
gas.
You had no
It's
gas.
okay.
Well, you did have
Well, then
gas.
first
it
we
wasn't where it was
had too
supposed to be.
much. Yeah.
And then they turned it off, and so we had no hot water. So I kept like being like, "Hi, Mom. We need to use your shower again."
Right.
Yeah.
All 5 of us.
Finally have water. It's just not hot.
Right. Yeah, it's been an interesting week, but
Yeah,
so we did miss visiting with everyone last week and
Yeah.
getting to talk about episode 7, which was in itself a good episode.
Mhm.
Definitely was.
Enjoyed it.
And but I kept saying the whole time, like especially after we had the Mount Doom eruption, and I think we all kind of left off from there at the end of episode 6 going, okay, that was
Yeah.
great and all, but what do you do now? Like, why wasn't that the finale?
Mhm.
Mhm,
Right.
mhm.
We were kind of all like, that just doesn't make sense. I don't know what they're going to do. And
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did not see where they were going to take it, and I'll give them props for that. It was if you're going to have Mount Doom and the creation of Mount Doom 2 episodes before the end, this is how you do the end.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yes.
so one of the things we haven't talked about on here, actually, we talked about it briefly on our episode of the Science Fictionary that we recorded Thursday that's coming out this next week or this week, is that we found out a few days ago that we're not getting season 2 for at least 2 years.
2 years.
No.
Yeah. That was a kick right in the pants.
That was a
It really was, and I guess I should have expected it. When I saw
Yeah.
when they started filming, I should have been like, oh, well, that's going to take a couple of years.
Yeah, the math was there, but
I wasn't willing to accept it until I heard it from the showrunner's mouth.
horses.
yeah.
And
I was
you know,
so busy trying to stay away from spoilers. This is the first time I'm hearing that.
right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be 2 years. Now they've also said some other interesting things. They said that they were really leaning into this season, doing a lot of things that they really didn't have a good foundation for from the books to how to set these stories up. But that if you're a a Tolkien purist, that as it moves forward, it's going to become more and more familiar.
And so I also there's been a lot of conversation about they had the rights to the appendices, but not the Silmarillion, like that. There's been a lot of conversation that centers around that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually went back and listened to the relevant chapters from the Silmarillion. I listened to like the last 3 chapters from the Silmarillion. Everything concerning the Rings of Power. Everything basically from the Mariner. What's his name? With the Silmaril on his brow. Who's the star? Elendil. Yes.
Elendil. Yeah.
So I pretty much went everything from there forward. And then I went back and listened to the appendices. And y'all, it's pretty much the same stuff.
It's
like a lot of it. A lot of it is like word for word.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me so happy.
And so I was like, so there are a lot of like much earlier lore that there's just why they decided to tell this story.
Right.
Because really everything that we have in the Silmarillion, we have in Appendix A.
Right. Because a lot of that's first age.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or even pre-first age.
Right, exactly. And so there's really only like probably 3 hours worth of audio content. If you're listening through it, there's really not that much, and that's about the same amount that there is in in Appendix A. And so that was a little bit reassuring, I guess, for me, because I was like, okay, because I was like, well, I mean, they're like leaving out all this stuff, and then I kind of started thinking through it, and I was like, they're really not.
Yeah.
When it really actually comes down to it, they're pretty much all that information is in both places. So that makes me feel a little better.
I think that when you look at the quote unquote lore breaking, it's mainly the time crunch that's here that changes the lore around. But which is funny because in the episode where they're talking about making the crowns and whatnot back and forth, he even says, you're asking for us to do something in 3 months that'll take 300 years, which is funny because it took 300 years to make, and it was it kind of, it's like a callback to the fact that they know what they're doing here, and we kind
had
of
that exact conversation. I was like, oh, that's totally like, because they specifically said we have 3 weeks. We could submit. I was like, I see what you did there.
Right. Very clever.
But I also saw a lot of people immediately after that episode come out and say, we should have gotten a whole season revolved around the creation of the rings. And I'm like, you didn't want that.
You would not want that. I don't think. What I found a lot of the hate that comes from this, the people that stand by the lore breaking and whatnot, I really don't think they would be happy with what they're asking for.
I don't either, because
and
what works on the page doesn't work on screen.
We'd be complaining about pacing like everybody's doing about Andor. If we were to truly give them what they want out of it.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So I mean, would it maybe be a little more feasible if we had 300 years for Celebrimbor and Anatar to do their but literally, he said, so he walks in and he looks around the forge, and I was like, oh no. And he says,
he walks in the forge and he says, is Galadriel here?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And when he says no, then he comes on into the room and is like,
Celebrimbor, I was like, no, he's being all snaky. Oh my gosh. Just a dead snake in the grass.
That whole scene, I stood up and we're watching it, and I'm like, Kel, it's it. No more question. It's Sauron. That's what's going on. And how do you know it? How do you know? They didn't say anything. I'm like, no, they didn't. And then he's like,
they did.
we'll call it a gift. And I'm like, ha, that's it right there. Lord of Gifts. And then,
Yep.
you know.
And I'm like, okay, pause it. Why is that Sauron? Because he said we'll call it a gift. And
Right,
then
how do
Chris
you know
like
that?
telling me this story, and I'm like, okay, stop.
yeah.
Don't ruin it for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I believe it's a Latin translation of the name. The name Anna in either Greek or Latin means gift,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and tar
Right.
is an antiquated word for a lord.
Right.
So I mean, we literally like he doesn't have to be called Anatar in
Mhm.
this. That's literally who he is. He's the Lord of
Mhm.
Gifts.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, it was one of those things. Like I see Joker saying, I've known it was Halbrand since episode 1. A lot
Well,
of
so
people
did
guessed that
we.
since episode 1.
We
We
could
thought
say
it
that.
was him on episode 1 as well.
Yeah.
And
I
then
was
we
like,
all kind of
"What?"
backed up and went, no, now I'm not sure
Well,
anymore.
But it was
That
fun.
this.
They tried to steer us over this way, and then maybe Gandalf was Sauron,
Yeah.
and you know.
I think we pretty much all left off after episode 6
Mhm.
thinking we had not actually met Sauron yet.
Yes.
Oh, we're all like, no, we totally haven't met him yet.
Yeah, guess he's not
We
here.
Bob is
totally
here.
have
Hi,
not met him
Bob.
yet. He's just going to show up,
Mhm.
I mean, it was just, I just really was like, I just don't think that Sauron shows up with, I mean, okay, so he clearly has no humility on a personal level.
Uh-huh.
Like Halbrand is clearly just kind of arrogant and, is just as good as anybody. And how dare you tell him he can't
Right.
forge steel in Numenor. But he doesn't come in on the top of his, he doesn't come in projecting power.
Yeah.
And I actually saw read some really interesting interviews with Charlie Vickers, who he was talking about, because they were asking him, like, did you know? He says, well, I suspected. They actually, one of his Richard III was one of his auditions, and the other one was the monologue from was Lucifer's monologue from Milton's Paradise Lost.
Right.
And I actually saw the showrunners were talking about how they were really kind of leaning into that, which I really think is great, because it's one of those we're pulling from the same places Tolkien pulled from, right?
Right.
And if you're going to flesh out the Devil of Middle Earth, what better place to kind of pull your inspiration from than the quintessential modern picture of Satan, which was Paradise Lost. Like, and that's if you've ever read Paradise Lost, like, you kind of read it and you sort of kind of get sucked in. You're like, I kind of like this guy.
They've come out now and basically said that it was intentionally, the way they handled Sauron was intentionally modeled after Paradise Lost, the way Satan's handled in Paradise Lost, which I don't know if either of y'all have ever read, but Satan is actually presented almost as an anti-hero in Paradise Lost.
Right.
And
he was charming.
He's charming, and you kind of like, and when you read interviews or you read where Milton, wrote about what he went for, was he wanted the reader to fall with Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
And he pulled it off really well. And they kind of pulled that off here, where it was like all of us, I think everybody was still going, well, Sauron, he definitely could be Sauron.
Right.
And they've definitely told us several times that it's him.
Oh yeah.
But they all at the same time made us kind of go, I really hope it's not.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, so when it comes to fruition there, you're just going, oh my God, like, I can't believe that.
I mean, and that was my thing. It wasn't like, I know a lot of people are really shipping Halbrand and Galadriel, and I don't. Like,
No.
I am,
and I don't see the show doing that. Like,
no.
I think that the romance that's being talked about when it comes to the show, this isn't romance. This isn't a love story.
No.
It's not even close. This is two very powerful people. That
he's an abuse, and he's an abuse. Like, this is the quintessential, like, abusive man trope.
Yes.
Well, you did that. Basically, you did this to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you everything. You can save me. You know,
Yeah.
you can bind me to the light.
Yes.
And
I'll give
then
you
whenever she
power.
just totally shuts him down, he tries to kill her.
Right.
I mean, it's like, which is the moment where you're like, okay, maybe he had, and you know, Tolkien does talk about a period of repentance that Sauron goes through.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, was it genuine? He kind of leaves it ambiguous as to how genuine it is.
Right.
Mhm.
And I don't really think he was being looking for redemption. That was all a ploy. And there is a moment where Galadriel asks Celebrimbor about how did he come up with that phrase, knowing that it was Halbrand that it came from, and the way Celebrimbor kind of dumps it off is, I heard it amongst my smiths. I think that Sauron has been working with Celebrimbor maybe in another form or in some way longer than we saw on
I think that's
He
possible
also kind of
too.
gets his glassy, I don't know.
Yeah, it was very
Sort of like his eyes kind of like loose. He's like, I don't know. Somebody said it
Yeah.
wasn't like, and it was just like almost like he thought that he had said it. You know, he thought he originated it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the kind of the reveal was great. Man, y'all, Charlie Vickers is so amazing.
Joker
Like-
voice. I really don't think Celebrimbor is dead, or I don't think
No.
Celeborn is dead.
No, he's
They
not.
don't actually even say Celeborn is dead.
Yeah,
he's just-
she
she
says
thinks
that he never comes back.
He's disappeared. He's MIA. And so I really did hope that we were going to see it. Like, I was like, they dropped it, but I think that that'll be something. I don't think that's what she will be doing next season.
Right.
I think that she will have some kind of information that says he's not, you know, there is rumor of him somewhere. And honestly, like, Celebrimbor is a very, you feel like he's got to be formidable because he goes toe to toe with her, but he just kind of comes off really lame.
Right.
I mean, like I said, you just sort of assume he's got to be cool, but you never hear anything interesting about him.
No.
It's just like, and he loved her, and she loved him, and they were a thing. It's like,
no, let's be real honest. Like, he mostly needs to show up because him and Galadriel need to have a child.
Yeah.
Like, because that's important to the story. Like, outside of that, he's not the elf I most want to see show up.
No.
If they had just, that's the only reason. Like, I really want Glorfindel in season 2.
But I'm hoping we actually get to see Celebrimbor actually be kind of cool.
Celebrimbor?
No.
Or Celeborn?
Celeborn, yeah.
Too many Kellas. Kelly this, Kelly that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that was there's a lot that needs to happen coming this season 2. There's a lot of questions that 2 years, some of those questions are probably going to be forgotten by most.
Well, write them down.
Oh, I'm not going to forget these questions.
Okay.
I'm all in on this show. So.
I love this show.
I really like the fact that when you look at the first and second, mainly the first age Galadriel, she's a badass. She is a warrior. She is in charge of these armies.
She's a rebel. She's one of the people who leads Isildur out of Valinor with the Valor, saying no.
So this whole, the ending of this and the creation of these rings is her putting her sword down, literally, in order to create these rings. So this is the end of the warrior Galadriel, and more into what people are familiar with, mainly in the shows or in the movies, is the power that is in Lothlorien.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. I mean, so let's kind of break down individual parts of the episode. So, let's back up to episode 7 a little bit here, because we get the aftermath of Mount Doom exploding and all of that. We've got a lot of people. We had a lot of people dead, a lot of people in various states of alive.
Yeah, we had Galadriel with all of her hair and a horse on fire. My only real problem with surviving a pyroclastic flow is you got hit full on in the face, and most everybody else. All right, it's a show. I'll look past it. Oh, there goes the horse on fire. all right. Yeah, we're just gonna.
Yeah, there are various stages. Now, I'll be the first to say I don't really necessarily need my high fantasy to be scientifically accurate all the time.
But they kind of went in for scientifically accurate with the whole water and the volcano thing. And then they were like, but lava does different things once it comes out the volcano.
Right.
Which, like you said, it's a story. So it's like, I mean.
If that's my biggest problem with the show, then it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there were just kind of, as the story went, they were like, if they do that, and at one point I was like, if they decide to do like Galadriel and Halbrand as a thing, I am done.
Yeah.
I am done. But the way that they kind of spun it was like, okay, that's interesting.
Wild.
That's not just like that really overdone, like they're both gorgeous and they're thrown together by chance, so now they have to be an item.
Right.
And that trope is so overdone. So I appreciated that they kind of, messed around it a little bit, kind of acted a little bit like they were going to, but that they really decided to spin it.
Yeah.
And actually, I saw again. I read several interviews with kind of all the people. Like that night, I'm sitting there. I'm such a nerd, y'all. But he was Charlie Vickers was saying, because people were like, well, what about he says, I know that there are a lot of people who ship Halbrand and Galadriel. He's like, but I don't see his attraction to her as authentically romantic at all.
Power.
Not romantic. Yes.
It's not romantic. And now I think that he is, I think that he has kind of assumed enough of humanity that if she had been willing to be his queen, they would have had a real messed up, I think he would have gone in, kind of the story that they told. I think he would have gone in for a really dysfunctional romance with her, even though he mostly wanted her power. But I think that that's what, it made, the fact that she's powerful, he thinks that she can make him more powerful. But the other thing that he said was Sauron is never going to be happy sharing power.
No.
Like ultimately he doesn't want her because he loves her. Or even because he is romantically attracted to her, he wants her so that he can use her.
Well, he knows so he can rule over the elves.
Right. He knows her power.
Well, I mean, we've even got the moment where we're going to make 2 rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no mistake who those 2 rings, who he intends them for. There is him and her.
Yeah. Those would be like the wedding rings to end all wedding rings. There, rings of power.
So when we back up and look at so what did y'all think about the stuff with Elendil and
Muriel? I'm really glad that I thought we were going to see Elendil kind of rise up against the faithful.
They had me worried.
That he had given up, and that would be a major problem for him to come back, and that the ship ride back home is kind of what solidifies to him that we're going to keep fighting. They took my son, so we're going to keep fighting. There were so many little things in this that you can read into, and I think they did that very much on purpose. Like even down to how Farazan is looking at the dead king with tears in his eyes, not as if he wants the king, but I think you're seeing the start of him fearing mortality, seeing the finalization of men, like that there is an end, and which brings about the fall of Numenor, that very thing. So there's a lot of those little nuances to it that were very clever being put in there, and they weren't gone unseen. So
Yeah.
No, I think we're. No, go ahead, Kelly.
Sorry.
It's okay.
We talked about on the last episode, that was 2 weeks ago now, jeepers, that we knew either the father or the son were going to die, just because they had that heart-to-heart about mom and talking to the horse and everything like that. So we kind of knew one of them were going to die. But seeing him so distraught over his son, seeing him reacting towards the horse, and then seeing him with the queen was just... I think he's the only one that the queen can honestly trust right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like what they did with the relationship between those two characters. And
Definitely.
But Elendil is easily one of the best characters in this show.
I really enjoy his
I'm really
character.
excited that going forward, we should get more and more of him on screen.
Yeah.
Yep. Because I think they need to put him on screen as much as possible.
Sith Care Bear says that the queen will hook up with the dad, and I think that the queen will, because just a couple episodes ago, the king was telling his daughter, "You need to get married," and he's the only one that she can trust, And
the relationship between the two of them works perfectly and does not harm one thing from the text.
I don't see anything romantic at this point in time other than that hardcore trust and mutual respect that they have for each other. And because of that, I think that would make a good queen and king right there.
So I think that they sort of set them up to, I think it will be a romantic, or at least the beginnings of a romantic relationship, given what we know her story is from the books, that it's going to be pretty tragic.
Very.
Which, I mean,
but very Tolkienian tragedy.
Yes, because he tells some really sad stories.
Oh, I mean, read Children of Hurin and it's like I saw somebody posted the other day, just read Children of Hurin for the first time. Who's paying for my therapy?
Right.
I mean, even Baron and Luthien, they win.
Yeah.
But it's not happy.
No.
Whenever the speech that the friend is giving Arondir in the first episode about, so far twice ever human and elf pairings, and it's never it's death and death and sadness, and it's just all the things. It's and like Andrew said, it's I think it's gonna be a very Tolkienian tragedy. I think I think it would be, and I think that one of the things that they're gonna kind of see, because part of the story is that Tar-Palantir kind of tries to pull things back from the brink. It's like if you're reading through Second Kings, and you're and they're like, and then here's Josiah, and he's like, he does the right things and he does the good things, and it's like, and it just stopped it for just a second, then he died, and it's just and it's that very same kind of story. It's like it's going downhill, and I think we're going to see the people who are trying to put the brakes on it, and I think that that's going to make not that the whole island disappearing in fire and water isn't tragic enough, but I think that we're going to see a much more human story of the tragedy of Numenor, and I think that's what you need from something like this. That's what you need
and that's a great
story like this.
Between the faithful and those that rose up. The faithful are devastated that they lost half their people, if not more than half their people.
But it's well more than half, I believe.
It's over 2/3 of them that are all gonna, we want immortality, and that's what they're gonna fight for. And the faithful are fighting for them. That it's a lot of Tolkien is Shakespearean, and it's tragic romance, and it's tragic love, and you, the ride there is so great that he takes you on, and that the wonders that you can see in such a romance, and then have it all come crashing down.
Yeah.
Even in the end, I mean, the movies make a beautiful end to the Lord of the Rings. In the books, it's terrible, the things that still happen. Like Arwen is basically just becomes basically his. They're married, but he has to have children with a human. You've got the Shires is screwed up. On the way back to Shire, there's goblins and orcs in the Shire. Like, it's not just a flick of the fingers and everything's better.
Right. Well, that's where you get into, I mean, the kind of some of the unfinished stories where kind of Tolkien started writing, the apocalyptic writings for Middle Earth that he kind of abandoned at some point, never finished. Right. But, basically very much, and this was really after he, realized how much of his Catholic faith he had inserted into the stories. And basically you have this end of days where people keep good, you have good kings, but evil always comes back, and it'll always come back until Iluvatar, the god of Middle Earth, actually comes into this world himself and vanquishes evil for good.
Right.
And so I mean, even the end of Lord of the Rings in the books is not necessarily a rosy ending. It's just another vanquishing, a temporary vanquishing of evil.
Evil's been vanquished for now. The kind of situation.
Yeah.
Is anybody disappointed that we didn't get to see if Elendil's daughter looked into the Seeing Stone?
That's one of the questions. That's one of the questions that season 2. It's like kind of leaving that open ended was strange. That we didn't see if she looked in and what. I mean, obviously she's going to look in there and see the fall, but
but I'm wondering if she sees something beyond what everyone else is seeing.
Yeah. I've listened to a lot of different takes on it, and that's the only one that would make really sense. The fact that something as minor as a made up character doing a made up thing, being part of it and leaving it as a cliffhanger there, and there's definitely more to it.
Something they didn't want to tell us yet.
Maybe it's her seeing that Isildur is still alive. It could be as simple as that, and that's it pumps them up to go back to find him.
Right.
I think they purposefully did that to start season 2 with.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
I did find the stuff with Tar Palantir where he's talking to her. He thinks that he's talking to Muriel, but he's. I thought they did some interesting stuff with the Seeing Stones. Him talking about having looked into the Seeing Stones so long that he can no longer differentiate reality from the visions.
Right.
And it's kind of what drove him to madness, and that's kind of what happens to Denethor.
Right.
Where Denethor spends all this time looking into the Seeing Stones, and it drives him mad.
Yeah, bonkers.
Real.
So I did think they added in some interesting things there, and I guess I think we've only seen the beginning of Farazan's his own fall into madness.
Yeah.
The madness that will eventually lead him to try to lead war against the Valar.
And you see the hints of it, not only with him standing over the dead king, but describing how the king is going to be immortalized in stone as no one has ever been done before in any land. There's a lot of talk of immortality there. So it's
attain an immortality in death that no man can attain in life.
Right. That's you straight building the character up to what he's going to be is the main driving force for the destruction in Numenor.
So I don't even think we've started seeing. We talked about this before, but I really thought we might see the sinking of Numenor this season.
Mhm.
when it first started, and I was like, man, that's going to be quick. Like, how are they going to do it that quick? And now it looks like we might not see that till season 2
Season
or 3.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call that the halfway point for the show.
Yeah.
I think that's a really solid,
That would be
probably
the best
ending
way
of
to go
season
about it.
3, or
Yeah.
because I think because everything changes at that point.
Right.
Right.
Once the Numenorians, the remaining Numenorians come to Middle Earth, that's kind of the beginning of a new chapter.
Mhm.
So,
And I did notice that they specifically said, the Southlanders said, we're going to an old Numenorian fortress. And so just kind of like a reminder, like the Numenorians have been here. They've come and gone over the years.
Mhm.
So there is a precedent for them having a presence there. So and I kind of honestly wonder if maybe some of these Southlanders we came across are going to be the one, some of the people because that the Numenorians are going to come in contact with when the Highlanders enter. Because like there is talk of mingling with lesser men.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the issues kind of going forward in Middle Earth. So I think that these may be our lesser men that are going to kind of mingle with the Numenorians once they get there.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
the remaining Southlanders.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. That's
the remaining Southlanders who were not drinking the Kool-Aid.
that makes more sense than pretty much anything else you can come up with them for them. The only other thing that would have made sense would have been if they had become, part of, with the Corsairs.
Yeah, but they said on the episode whenever they're on the water, when they're adrift, somebody's like, it's a Corsair ship. She's like, no, it's not. Like they actually reference the Corsairs.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I think that because it doesn't really make. I know there were a lot of people, thinking, and I initially thought they might do it because in Halbrand's character poster, when those first posters they released, he's holding a sword, which winds up being a Numenorian sword, but it has the horse head as the pommel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought that those people might somehow have something to do with, or even the Rohirrim, which I'm glad they didn't do because the people of Rohan need to come from the north.
Right.
And those are people that I really hope. I mean, obviously, I think we're a ways off from seeing them introduced, but there are people I really want to see introduced.
Right.
I do find one when going back to episode 7 with the dwarves, listening to actors and actresses speak about their roles and what they believe their roles to be and how that can affect people's opinions about the stories and stuff. The actress that played Doran's wife was very guilty of that, where she came out saying a lot of stuff. And I found it hilarious that she ends up being the one to push Doran to dig deeper and to go. And we're going to do this. And it makes her responsible for digging too deep and being too greedy. So when we finally see at the end of season 7, essentially Doran's Bane awakening in the mithril vein, I had watched it again and had a good laugh over it because it was one of those, these are the people that are projecting these politics onto shows that where a lot of the haters that come in see these politics and say, wow, this person said this and this person said that. And you have to remove yourself from reality for a fantasy show. It's kind of a requirement. But to see that she ends up being this real big push to dig too deep and to be too greedy, I found
that old crotchety king you were so ticked off about is right.
Yep. He was like, don't dig too deep because you'll think bad things will happen. And what do you know? Those damn Balrogs.
And I think it also deals with a lot of Tolkien's themes where really well-intentioned people really screw up, like badly. And and for the most part, by the time we get to Lord of the Rings itself, the well-intentioned people kind of turn out to be right. At least most of them, not all of them.
Right.
Some of the, Boromir ends badly. He's mostly well-intentioned, but and he doesn't totally end badly. But you know what I mean.
Right.
He takes a little detour there.
Yeah, a little bit.
But we're seeing a lot of people with really good intention. Elrond and Gil-galad are like, get her off of this continent because we have foreseen that she's liable to bring this thing back.
Right.
But they don't tell her that. They just are like, basically like, we're just tired of dealing with you, go away. That's basically the vibe she gets. So they don't tell her, they don't give her the information because I don't know why they think they're protecting her or something.
Right.
And so here she goes, but all these well-intentioned things she does, she gives him these speeches about how, no one's really bad. And it doesn't matter what you've done. It just matters what you're going to do.
Right. Unless you saw
Great job giving a confidence boost to the devil.
Right.
You actually needed it. Like, you happened upon the devil when he needed a confidence boost and you gave it to him. Good job.
He was one TED talk away from total annihilation of the world, and you gave it to him.
Exactly. And so, and again, this is a theme we see a lot in the Silmarillion is, people who they mean well. They just don't have all the information.
Right.
And they make really, and sometimes for really good reasons, like we're going to dig for that mithril because, hoorah, we're going to play ball.
You're going to be greater than your father. You're going to be, the savior of the elves. You're going to, all of these things that are, somewhat boastful. But, they started off with a good intention. And, so we're the fact we're going to see, how the Mines of Moria, become, what it is in the movies.
I hope
it's wild.
I really hope they take their time with it.
Yes.
I kind of wish they hadn't done the Balrog this season.
Yeah, that's showing.
Like, even if the leaf had just burst into flame when it hit the bottom,
that
would have been enough for me.
Right.
Like,
people who didn't know. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I get it. I see where you're going. I just kind of feel like someone in the effects department just really wanted to make a Balrog.
Right. Right. For this season. Like we need it in this season.
We probably need a good 2 seasons, another 2 seasons. Before they really, because they should be able to mine quite a bit of mithril.
So it kind of, that leaf hits it and it's like rawr, but then it's like, nope, ain't doing that. Maybe it senses the elves around and is not interested in, and so it just kind of dies.
It goes a little deeper. It's awake now.
Honestly, I didn't feel like it was really quite so deep as it ought to have been.
No.
So maybe we're just going to see it kind of sort of pull back until Sauron really.
I mean, it's in the thing about it. It's a big, scary Balrog, but he's as far as we know, the last of his kind.
Yeah.
And he did go there to hide.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe he just hides. But why? I
just maybe we'll see somebody walking around in the mine and there's a Balrog like cowering behind a rock, like
right.
Okay, but like Moria shouldn't be actually destroyed till after the last alliance.
That's a third age thing. So
third age thing.
I really kind of feel like we shouldn't see them encounter the Balrog till right at the end.
Right.
But I have to interject for people like me who never read it. I needed to see the Balrog to know that there's something down there. Like there's something really evil down there, because if a leaf just caught on fire and disintegrated, it wouldn't tell me.
You're going to have Durin and Disa go in there, and the Balrog's going to hear Disa going off on Durin, and he's going to be like, well, maybe we'll wait another few hundred years.
I mean, I was on the table with her, so
that who I've been hearing these last several hundred years?
From
Maybe he
the
doesn't like the resonating. Maybe the resonating really just, he doesn't
Right.
like it, and so big. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
he's down there with his like nightcap on, trying to sleep, and she keeps singing.
Jeez, what a nag.
So,
He comes over, gives Duran a pat on the back. I'm sorry, bro.
yeah. Okay, so in seriousness though, how long do y'all think? So I gave my prediction for the fall of Numenor. At what point in the show do y'all predict that Durin's Bane really comes and wreaks havoc and Khazad-dûm goes the way of the dodo?
Final season.
I would like to see final season. It would make sense for it to be the final season.
Mhm.
However, I think we're going to get it sooner. I think we might see him in the fourth season. That's where I think we're going to probably end up with it. I don't know. Like I said, like you were saying, just seeing him alone is huge. So,
Yeah.
that's a big it's a big card to whip out right in the beginning there, or at the end as you would. But I'm hoping we wait till at least later in the fourth season.
I mean, and I really thought we were going to get to see at least 3 more seconds of him than we saw in the trailer. It was literally the shot from the trailer.
The shot.
And I was like, I mean, come on, at least give us some, compelling music to go with it. Something. Something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, just a tease.
It's just kind of like he pops up and roars and then he's gone. It's like, okay.
Although,
but I do understand. I do agree, Kelly, for people who don't know what is down there. Like if you're new to all this, I do think between the music and the leaf burning, you could have got the idea that there's something bad down there.
Yeah.
But I do understand.
But I saw it and I was like, wow,
it was cool. I mean, seeing a Balrog is definitely a cool thing.
Right.
It's just I kind of thought we were going to see, when they teased us with a Balrog, I really thought we were going to see a little more of a Balrog.
Right. Really, my biggest issue isn't that he was there. It's well, now what do you do with him? Are you just going to ignore it and just leave it in the back of their mind this is going to go badly?
But just occasionally cut to the Balrog curled up sleeping.
Right. Look, his little paws are going. Oh, he's dreaming.
Sure, pleasant dreams where no one dies horrible deaths.
Right.
So, okay. One of the things that I really wasn't sure how I felt about this, since we're talking Balrogs, right? The fire spirits who were Maya, right? They're the same species as Sauron and as Gandalf,
right?
Originally, right? They're the same order of being. So I felt like they did a lot of stuff with fire in this season.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kind of bugged me initially, I was like, okay, if they better give us a good in-universe reason why, if this is Gandalf and not Sauron, why he shows up in a flaming eye.
Right.
Right.
But I do kind of wonder if one of the things that they're not doing is kind of tying these fire spirits together as such.
Right.
Because Gandalf and Sauron are the same. They are fire spirits. That's
something essence. That they never actually, the movies are guilty of never touching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're more alike than you would think.
So I kind of wonder if maybe that isn't the reason that they're using a lot of the same imagery for these characters. And I think part of it is obviously part of it's a misdirect. So that first trailer, we're going to be like, that's the Eye of Sauron. Now we know who he is. Right.
Yeah.
But as the more I thought about it, the more I was like, they are fundamentally the same. Right. Yeah. They've made different life choices.
Right.
But they are they're the same. And so having things that sort of tie them together, kind of on further reflection, I think I feel a little better about it than I did, because I was always like the hot fire, well, okay, where does Gandalf just being able to put out fires? Where that would have come in very handy whenever a certain number of dwarves we're in a certain tree. The whole just went up the fire thing would be handy.
No, I had to whisper to a moth. And
Just saying. Like, because I can't not be that person just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I do kind of appreciate that we're kind of, because I always, like, when I went back and read, the books and the appendices and the and I'm like, they're like kind of like they never touched that with a 10-foot pole that Gandalf and Sauron and the Balrog are all the same.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of feeling, as we've kind of gotten into it, I'm a little more okay with that than I was initially.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's I know Nerd of the Rings was one of them, listening to their review. Like, he's still holding out hope that this isn't Gandalf, like, to the bitter end. And it's one of those, like, listen, and he makes a good point. Whether he's Gandalf or not for the next 2 seasons, they're getting the publicity of having Gandalf if he's not Gandalf. And if he is, well, then we knew it all along. So as far as the show is concerned, being ambiguous about it is, just as good as if you were to say it is Gandalf, if better. I think the fact that he's with the hobbits, the fact that he's going on an adventure with Nori, the fact that he's finally coming back and that veil is being lifted on his thoughts and whatnot.
And he's starting to give very Gandalfian.
Yeah. Now, if you're like, well, I'm one of the blue wizards and I'm going to turn on Nori at some point, then it's just dumb. That would be just be a big buzzkill. Now it has to be Gandalf.
I think
right. So. I'm completely convinced it's Gandalf at this point. I think that they were very pointed. I think they wanted to end the mysteries with this season.
Right.
I think they wanted to. I don't think everybody's been accusing it of mystery box writing.
Right.
Well, the problem with, like, when you look at, like, J.J. Abrams' mystery box writing, he never answers questions.
No, ever.
You just keep building more mystery.
Right. We'll leave it to
you never
the
answer the questions. And this, I feel like, answered all the questions. And now we can move forward without all of this
baggage.
Without all the baggage of who is this person, who is this person. I feel like that's what they're talking about with next season. Next season, we're going to get something that's way more straightforward because now we've introduced everybody and can move forward into the story.
I think that there's a good reason, because if they show up and they're like, here's Sauron, everybody's going to be like, ooh, and you're not going to, I mean, Calabar's a smart dude.
Yeah.
He is enamored of his own skill, but he's not an idiot. Feanor was not a dummy. Feanor had the sense to be like, no, whenever Morgoth came calling.
Right.
I mean, Celebrimbor is his grandson. He's it's got to be, and to be like, yes, and he didn't seem like he was selling a bill of goods. He did such a good job, like, because initially you're like, yeah, no, totally Sauron. Then you're like, I don't know. He really just seems like he's just trying to escape his past.
Right.
Like, you buy it. Yeah. And so it makes it more plausible that these powerful. Now, the one thing that, like, they kind of, Gil-galad never buys into it, but half elven Elrond does a little bit, which is like, he specifically stated that Elrond totally didn't buy it.
Right.
And so that was the one that hurt my feelings a little bit, because I was like, but he, because he's supposed to be really clear-sighted.
Right.
So the fact that he bought it, that he wasn't more skeptical,
a little off character.
A little off character,
especially when he states later about how he can see things that the elves can't.
Yes.
Kind of contradicts that.
So that was kind of probably my biggest gripe about the whole Sauron reveal. I really liked the way they did it, but I felt like Elrond should have been, especially since he was specifically stated that he never drank the Kool-Aid.
Right.
that he should have been a little more. Now, clearly, from going forward, and I think that we're going to see more from Anatar. And I think the other thing that I'm not loving is that Galadriel is not telling them what's up. And I feel like she's not telling them because for the story, they need Celebrimbor to keep working with him.
Right. He has to make.
But it doesn't make good sense to me.
But I think Elrond already knows. Like, I think he already knows. He picked up the scroll.
He
read everything.
He knows now, but he made a promise to Galadriel to be like, just trust me.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like her insistence on not telling them what's going on comes off a little self-serving, which is, I don't really feel like where she should be at this point in her life. There's no reason not to tell them except that she doesn't want to. The only reason for her not to tell them is because Halbrand did get in her head a little bit.
Right.
When he says, what are they going to do when they find out that you're the one? You're the reason that Sauron is here.
Yeah.
And
like you said, it's like battered woman syndrome,
Yeah.
So let's fall into some speculation here for a moment. So when we do in the aftermath of Mount Doom, we do find Halbrand with an odd wound that needs elvish medicine to heal. Found on the road. How did he get there? Where did the wound come from?
Right.
There are a couple of theories that I've seen kind of bandied about online. One, that it's self-inflicted, that he knew where they would go. The other is there is another character that disappeared just before Mount Doom exploded.
Adar.
So I've actually seen it postulated that Adar was Sauron.
Right.
And that he killed Halbrand and took Halbrand's form.
Or that he killed the form that was Sauron and became Adar. And then, I've seen some, I don't know. It's definitely going to be, that's definitely one of the biggest answers we need to get out of the second season pretty early. There's a few of them, and one of them being, what is this with Adar and Sauron? But if you look at the words that Halbrand used and the words that Adar used, they're so similar, where it's not telling you the complete truth, but it's not an all-out lie. Like I told you, I took it off of a dead man. When it came to the pack around his neck.
And it's a little suspicious that Celebrimbor spouts the exact verbatim quote that we heard out of Adar's mouth earlier.
Right.
Well, I do think the second season is going to begin with some revealing of what happened there, because I do think they left some stuff unexplored. It's also possible that Halbrand or Sauron just, took that moment that there's actually a fight between Halbrand and Adar,
right,
where he's left wounded.
I think that's
because he's not going to let Adar live.
No,
unless Adar is Sauron.
I really think that.
I think Halbrand was Sauron.
I think Halbrand was Sauron from the beginning. I think that's and also just from things that kind of people are behind the scenes people are saying,
right?
Like Charlie Vicker was saying that they told him at episode 3 was when they told him, which is whenever the Númenóreans picked him up, that just by the way, you're actually Sauron. And so I think that if Adar was Sauron, that would not be.
It would be a little backwards on that.
What a twist as an actor to walk into work and be like, "Oh, by the way, you're Sauron."
Yeah, you are the big bad.
You're Satan,
right? Yeah,
and not like this sort of like friendly version of Satan that we've gotten like here a couple of iterations of lately. Like he's really not a bad guy. He just doesn't like to be told what to do. No, like straight on, like biblical statements.
Yes.
I mean, you have to look at it that those of us that have read the books and know, we know where different things are happening and how they've happened. And they were telling their own story to get to this place. So there was a lot of misdirects. We all kind of said we think Halbrand is Sauron. You know, look at him. As soon as he got to Numenor, all he wants to do is start smithing some stuff.
Yes.
So,
yes.
you know, we said that. We said, you know, he's definitely not Sauron. He's the stranger is at least one of the wizards. We were calling it from the beginning, but with all of these misdirects, they were very well placed. I mean, there's a lot of complaints about, well, you know, I knew it from the beginning. Yeah, sure, we could all say that. You know, we were all right with our first speculative.
If you didn't doubt it at any point, you weren't paying attention to the show.
Yeah. Right, exactly. That's where I was going. Is that these misdirects were very well placed, and
yes, they were.
Kept you guessing because you have to. I mean, we're hearing a story that we've known, you know, that we've read. So, and you're changing it in order for to be on film, which happens with every literary piece. So you have to keep us that know what's going on our toes and wanting to watch. Yes. And I thought the misdirects were perfect cues. I mean, it was just enough to go, can't count them out completely, maybe, but you know, would. And it's you know, and then before you know it, you're like, that son of a
yep. Oh, call it a gift.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, Marisha, he says call it a gift, and Marisha's like, no.
That's what that was, Kelly, because I'm like, oh, it's over now. He's sore. How do you get sore out of there? Can I tell you what Anatar means now?
Yeah.
They don't have to say any of that.
told you who he was, and that's the same reason. I'm, you know, going back to the Gandalf thing. I'm completely convinced. Like, I don't even know what we're calling them, the three mystics.
Right.
Refer, you know. They don't know who he is, but it's like it's not him. It's not Sauron. It's the other, the
Istar. Yeah.
The only one that's really the other. The only one that does his job.
Saruman is pretty full of himself. Radagast is happy living in a hobbit hole somewhere of his own. You know, covered in bird shit. You know, I thought the movies did him well when it came to that, because he is Mr. Nature. And the other two blue wizards didn't survive long because they, you know, succumbed to the dark side. And
they were like, let's go have a cult over here.
Right.
Well,
yes.
There is a stretch of time where they do good things. They show up in the Second Age and they do a lot.
They try. They go east, and
they become a big hindrance for him in the Second Age.
Right.
But by the Third Age, they're gone. Well, we assume they're gone. We don't really assume.
Yeah, we never really hear about them again. And the other question is the what are they? The Dweller, what are they called? It was the Dweller, the something and the something.
The Ascetic and
the Ascetic and the Wanderer, something like that. The Nazgals. Because you get that hint where they form their you know, true selves that we see. That's a big thing.
The nomad.
That's right.
That's it.
That's a big thing for them to show up the way they do, because it makes them more than just some magic toting humans from the East. They're definitely bigger than that. Whether they are a lower Maiar or something of the sort. They're definitely more powerful than just some humans that know magic. So that's definitely interesting on where that goes. I mean, they're obviously going to meet up with Sauron now that they're going to be heading east. We've got Gandalf and Nori heading east to the room.
Yes.
We're setting up for a lot of good stuff to come with all of this.
But there are just too many things. Like, I think it would be bad writing at this point to give us all the things they gave us with Gandalf.
Right.
All the arrows. He might as well have just had an arrow above his head that said Gandalf.
Right.
Because even coming down to the, you know, follow your nose thing.
Yeah.
And the way he talks about adventures. And it's Gandalf.
It's Gandalf.
It's totally Gandalf.
And I think you can do misdirects, but you shouldn't have to do bad writing to misdirect people. And I
Right.
think to have all of those arrows pointing at him saying, this is Gandalf, to just tell
Right.
us later that it's not, would not be.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Right.
at this point, a lot of I'll be curious how Kelly feels about this, but with more casual viewers, possibly even people that have never seen the movies, watching this and saying, and kind of giving us a hint, and they're hearing at this point, even those people are hearing, this is Gandalf,
Yeah.
which is a pop culture name. Like, even if you haven't seen the movies, you should know who Gandalf
I know who Gandalf is.
And
Guy on Harry Potter.
And then to get into the next season or even 2 seasons down the road, go, oh, by the way, not actually Gandalf.
Yeah, that's Alatar. My name is Alatar. I remembered. And then everybody's going to say, who the hell is Alatar?
And everybody's like, well, they didn't give us his name so he wouldn't, so they could, because it's one of the Blue Wizards. It's like,
because they want to drag it out.
Well, but also those names,
Yeah.
Palando, Gandalf, they're not their Maiar names.
No,
These are names they get after they come to Middle Earth. He
And-
doesn't have the name Gandalf yet.
Gandalf has all kinds of names, and he's headed for the east. And when he explains, was it to Frodo at one point, about his names and what he's Mithrandir to the hobbits, and he says, to the east I don't go. So, he's the nameless one heading east, which kind of falls into that same, that same talk that he has, that he is nameless.
And I think it also works because, like I went there.
To the east, I don't
there
go.
Are places I've been, and it's like, I don't go there.
Yeah,
Right.
because a lot of people are like, well, he's going to the east, so it's definitely not Gandalf. It says, to the east, I do not go. Not, I never went.
Never went,
Well,
right.
I've never been.
Right.
But to the east is not my jam.
Well, I mean, we
ain't
could
doing
see
the
him
east.
go out there and run into the Blue Wizards, who are not.
Who could
Maybe.
already be there, and that's
Have
when he
cult.
realizes. Yeah.
Oh, what
That'd
if the
be
Blue
cool.
Wizards are the one who sent the mystics?
Oh.
Right.
I mean,
That would be
because
cool.
the thing is, they clearly know how to recognize this type of entity, which is why they mistake Gandalf or Sauron, because they clearly have some of the same kind of resonance or whatever. So clearly, whatever tools, but how do they know to confuse two different Maiar if they've never interacted with one?
Right. And that's where I think their true
And how do they
forms
know
coming out.
how do they know who the Istar are?
Yeah.
It could be that the Blue Wizards have already been there and have already told them that, there's at least 3 more of us. And, could be that Sauron is back and one of them showed up and, go find Sauron and oh no, it's the other one. So that phrase right there, just saying that it's the other one, the Istar, kind of leads credence to that, they were told that there'd be another one. So
now
that would
here's
be
a
neat.
question. When possible Gandalf went and did like that thunder punch to the chickies, did that kill them or just send them into a different dimension?
I think it kind of got rid of their physical form.
I think their physical form was destroyed. We don't really know what they were yet.
Right.
If they were
If they were Maiar, then their physical form's temporary anyway.
Right.
So they're immortal, as in the indestructible immortal.
I still like the Nazgûls. I think that's
the Nazgûls cracked me up. I guess that was probably you. I saw a post that at some point.
It's just I heard that and it's gonna stick now.
So we've done a lot of talking about kind of bridging the world, the seen and the unseen worlds. Which is what the Nazgûl are. They're creatures that exist mostly in the unseen world and have a manifestation. Even Sauron, that's what Sauron is. Is after his physical form is destroyed, his presence is still there, but mostly in the unseen world. And so I think it's possible that it's something like that could have even been part of his experiments.
Well, yeah, we saw the remnants of it when Galadriel went north. That he was doing some crazy stuff with orcs and magic, and his mark was left, behind over this. So absolutely could be one of his experiments that brought
Well, and
these.
speaking of other signposts pointing to Gandalf, the freaking moth, right?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, I read something too. Is the flower that pops out of the apple tree when he's trying to heal the apple tree? It's a flower that's, and then I can't remember the name of it. There's too many shows going on right now. I'm trying to remember everything for.
Yeah.
But it's described in the books as being a 5-leaf or a 5-petaled flower. In the show, it's 6, but it represents a star, and that alone could have been, something along those lines, that it was that it's another pointing right at Gandalf.
Well, I took it that it represented a star, but the star was on a star map, so that's how I took that.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't tell me
But
one
there's so many things. Like it's just the name of the constellation that he's looking for that can only be seen from this one place, and it's called the Hermit's Hat.
Right. Right.
It's freaking Gandalf.
Right. When I think of Hermit Hat, I think of Gondol's hat. Yes. Yep. That's him. Of course.
So I don't know. I get why some people are still determined for it to be a blue wizard.
Yeah.
But after having read the stuff, like I'm not offended at having the Istari show up in the Second Age.
No.
So it's a bigger deal to me that it is very, very clear over and over and over and over again that the only person who pays attention to hobbits at all is Gandalf.
It's Gandalf.
Yeah.
And he
Always.
loves the hobbits.
The whole
Always.
all of the rest of the wise in the entire world are concerned. They might as well not even exist.
Saruman gives him crap over it, that he
Exactly.
wastes
So
his
that tells
time.
me it's not Saruman. I guess the blue wizards aren't one of the wise by then, but
Yeah.
it works thematically because he is ever and always the one who is invested in the little and the innocent and the seemingly unimportant.
Right.
And I think in much the same way that like early childhood experiences are formative, I think that these experiences, these lessons in compassion and friendship and loyalty that he's getting, in this really kind
From the
of
hobbits.
infantile.
Well, and it's this thing. Tolkien never wrote this, but like as this thing that shapes Gandalf and makes him different from the other Istari.
Because he's different from all the rest of them.
Right. And the fact that like these hobbits were never mentioned, and that there's a lot of hate over Gandalf, not Gandalf, and of course the Harfoots, and how dare, why are we looking at stupid hobbits? Well, that's what everyone in Middle Earth says, is what about the stupid hobbits? So the fact that we're getting this, essentially a backstory on Gandalf and the hobbits, that we didn't read, that we don't, it fits so well with what we know of Gandalf from the books, is that why he has such a kindred relationship with these little people is because they're the ones that brought him away from evil. They sacrificed themselves to help him for no reason other than it was the right thing to do.
I mean, and let's be honest, when is Gandalf not going on an adventure with the Hobbit? I mean,
right.
So
sort of his MO.
It's really strange that I will say that, I'm sure a lot of the critics, as well as the YouTubers, the podcasters that are so up in arms about the show, I find it very funny that I haven't heard many of them ever mention Tolkien up to the point of the Rings of Power showing up. That when the Lord of the Rings came out, the movies, there was a lot of uproar over the movies being different from the stories and deviating. And exactly. So, but it wasn't this much uproar over it. And now they're celebrated as, being, and they're great film.
Absolutely.
So it's funny that it kind of just screams like this is the thing to do. It's a little bit
Phantom Menace. Like,
Yes.
when it came
Yes.
out, there was, everybody saw it the first time and was like, and it went,
Yeah, the Phantom Menace. Everybody went, and you were riding this high of seeing Star Wars in the theater again, and then you got home later and you started going,
Wait.
wait a minute.
I mean, and people were so ugly that,
Yeah.
like, literally most of those actors either wanted to be done or were done.
We're done. Yeah.
Ahmed Best, like, attempted suicide.
Yes. Yes.
Like, people were so ugly about those movies. But here now we are, 25 years later,
Right.
and
Oh.
everyone, like
Yeah.
Hayden Christensen shows up on the set of on the set of Kenobi,
Oh.
and everybody loses their minds.
Right.
Ahmed Best shows up at Celebration and gets a standing ovation.
Right.
Because now all of the people who were kids when it came out are like, oh, it's Star Wars. I loved this.
This takes me back to my childhood.
It takes me back to my childhood.
Right.
And I think that those movies, those movies were a lot of people's introduction into Middle Earth. Like
Absolutely.
they had a following, but not the kind of following they have now.
Yeah.
Like those movies are Lord of the Rings for a lot of people.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, it was my introduction. I had started, I think, the first book before the movie came out because everybody told me you have to read the book first.
Right.
And it was like it's a little hard to read. I don't remember 16 or so, but it was a little bit. It's a long.
It's a long read. You're dedicated. You have to dedicate yourself to reading it.
But after that first, after that first movie came out, I read all the things. I was all in. And I'm not the only one.
Right.
Like a lot of people who are your biggest kind of Tolkien fans right now got into it because of the books, especially if they're less than 40.
Yeah.
Pretty much anybody 40 and under who is a Tolkien fan is at least as much a fan of the movies as the books.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. I mean, I read these books, going back now. 30 some years ago. So, going from that and then it was one of those things that I had always wanted to see movies made of these books. I'm sad I didn't get to share it with my dad because he's the one that gave these books to me. But I was head over heels over the movies when they came out. I could not believe. And then when we got the extended versions of the movies, and then the leather-bound extended versions of the movies, and then the special edition leather-bound and and then we filled up all of our shelves.
Bought all of them. When we got married, I was like, "Baby, do we need 3? Okay, we're not going to talk about all of the book versions of Lord of the Rings on our shelves. Do we need 3 Lord of the Rings DVDs of the same movie?
Yes, you do. Because they're not quite the same, not all of them.
Okay, now
one.
Does anybody care about the theatrical cut anymore? Has anyone watched the theatrical cut one single time since the extended version?
But if they want to see them, I have the DVD.
We don't.
We only have the leather-bound copies.
Now they've got the 4K sets.
Oh, and did you see the 50th anniversary book set that came out on Amazon?
Oh, that was pretty.
Yeah.
All right. Something else. Speaking of Amazon and things to buy on Amazon, why the hell isn't there more tie-in merchandise? I was like, I
right?
buy those
because
rings.
Weta
There's
owns
nothing.
because they don't have a deal to do.
No, the rings. They completely redesigned the rings so that they didn't.
Maybe they'll
do
do
it.
They did, but the estate owns all the merchandising rights.
But they could. Okay, but Amazon makes a shit ton of money selling other people's stuff. That's what they do. They can be like official Tolkien. Why is there no official Rings of Power stuff?
I think stuff will start trickling out.
Yeah, I think from what I read, the estate was going. It's a baby Grogu all over again.
But for no good reason. They could have sold us those rings and that sword and that armor. And
I did read that the estate was going to be working when it came to the merchandising portion of it. That they would be open to basically saying, "We'll give you a portion of percentage because it is your material, but we own the rights to it. So you get a portion of it when we're raking in the best of it.
I just that it's like, did you learn nothing from George Lucas? Like, have you been sitting in a box for the past 45 years?
Merchandising.
Come on now.
Did you listen to
Merchandising.
nothing Yogurt said?
You're right.
Yes, did you listen to nothing? Merchandising, people. Where is the merchandise?
Mount Doom the flamethrower.
I'm literally like, I'm on Amazon. I'm like, sure. I mean, it's an Amazon ship. Rings of Power, Elven Rings.
Right.
Yeah.
Rings of Power, Nenya. You know? Nothing.
Nothing.
Now, I'll tell you this: as soon as they make Feanor's hammer, I'm buying that. Like,
well, I do have.
Like, I was going to buy the rings, the sword. I was going to buy all the things, and I don't have any money. I was going to put all the things in my wish list, and they aren't there.
When Shadow of Mordor came out, I went to a midnight release of it and got my little
Oh,
a little bottle opener.
Yeah.
Celebrate for his hammer there.
Yep.
That's great.
But yeah,
and
they
you
showed
have
they showed us Feanor's hammer, and I was like, as soon as they make that, I'm buying it.
Right.
Like,
Hey, we could. We've been talking about getting into metal casting. That may be our thing. That we
There you go.
But I mean, for real. And I started thinking about it. It's like, you don't have any shit from Wheel of Time either. What is wrong with you people?
Right.
Like, literally, you're like, we make movies and we sell stuff.
Right. Why don't you sell the stuff from the movies? God, Bezos, stop with the rocket ship. It looks like, well, we're not even going to go into that. Just worry more about merchandising.
I mean, that's for real. Like, that is just blowing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It shows up in my feed that the Funko Pops for Lord of the Rings that came out years ago are now just back flooded into Amazon. They just cost a fortune now because they're retired pops. And as a pop collector, I'm looking at them going, well, when they go on sale, I really should get them, but I still can't drop $75 on a piece of plastic bobblehead. That ain't gonna happen.
No.
So, there's other things I would get. But
you have Sting on the wall. Did you forget that? You have Sting?
I don't forget that.
Is Gandalf back there?
Yeah, Gandalf is.
Yeah, you have Sting.
I didn't get on the Funko Pop train until late, and now I'm looking at all the ones that I want and go, oh,
So
beautiful.
Oh, look at him.
Isn't he cool?
Oh, he's beautiful.
Cool. The moth, too. Nice.
So, who's going to be the Witch King?
Ooh,
I was really set on, okay, Halbrand is going to be in Nazgul.
Right?
Theo. It's got to be Theo.
I think Theo at this point is going to wind up being someone important in Gondor.
Yeah.
I like that little back and forth he had when he thought his mother was dead and he was with Galadriel. And she was telling him, you can't do this and you should do this and this is how a warrior does it. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I think that conversation that he has with Galadriel, that whole little aside there, like basically he's almost been charged with a destiny by Galadriel herself.
Yeah, by an OG
she's the one that hands him his sword, gives him the sword and all this. And I'm just like, he's going to. I was convinced that he was going to fall to the bad side, but I've totally changed my mind on that.
Same.
And I think he will be very.
So?
I think he's going to be very
he's
important.
Going to be bad. She even told him, it's going to harden you. If you have all this anger inside you,
calling dark deeds good.
Right. Right. There's a little mix that we've been shown that could go either way with this character as well.
Mr. Rex.
But I think it's the advice given to him by Galadriel that is going to make the difference in where that character goes.
Right.
We see him, when it's time to go, taking his sword and being the first one out the door, like to rally everyone else. And even to the surprise, if you see his mother's face, Bronwyn's face kind of gives that, like, what happened to my son kind of look.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
he's a soldier now.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we've even met him yet. It's just
Yeah, I think we've still got to meet the dwarf lords. We've still got to meet the kings of men. I don't think we've met them yet.
Right.
And I'm curious what we're going to do about those rings now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, that's
I mean,
kind
we
of
know who's supposed to get them. Like
Mhm.
we have been told that they have cast Círdan the shipwright. They don't know who, but
Right.
they have cast Círdan for next season.
Yep.
So
and look,
Círdan gets a ring, Galadriel gets a ring, Gil-galad gets a ring.
Mhm.
Right? If we
I don't
didn't
think
get
they're
that,
going
I'm
to
going to be
change it.
sad.
I don't think they're going to change.
I'm going to be indignant.
No.
I'm going to have words.
I will give it. When we were worried about Gil-galad being his character seeming off, I think we got a little bit of that course correction with his character
Mhm.
when it came to
Mhm.
the crowns, where the distaste that he showed
Yes.
for crowning him, which was perfect in character.
Total disgust.
You know, like that.
Um,
That's what we wanted to see, not this,
mhm.
you know, sneaky, shisty kind of thing about, you know, taking from the dwarves in order to help themselves. This came
Right.
off as something very kingly, that you're not going to crown
Right.
me with that. You know,
Yeah.
it's too
That
much
is
power.
too much power to put on one being.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that we haven't seen the best of Gil-galad yet. But yeah, I think that was a great course correction. And we even get the moment where we kind of get Elrond speaking wisdom to Gil-galad and then
Mhm.
saying, or have you forgotten your own counsel? It's like,
Mhm.
yes, I'm giving you this piece of wisdom, but you said, this is something you said.
Yeah.
So I do think that we're going to ultimately get the Gil-galad that we want. I think that it was just, there was a lot of things, some that were unnecessary in the way they told the story this season, but
Mhm.
I don't feel like I leave off this season really happy with where everything's at. There's nothing I'm really still like, there's nothing I'm upset with. I think they
Mhm.
answered all of my questions that I needed answered in that finale.
Mhm.
I'm still like, so the whole Mithril thing, and with the origins of the Mithril and how they chose to do that, I had an issue with that, and then the more I kind of thought on it, and I really like, I wanted to go live and talk about it before the finale and how where I
Yeah.
thought they were going, and I just didn't
Right.
get a chance.
Mhm.
But you know, when you start looking at what the three rings represent and prolonging the elves' power in Middle Earth, and then when the one ring is destroyed and those three rings lose their power, that's when the elves are, you know, need to leave.
You need to leave,
Mhm.
yeah.
And so I think that even though was kind of like, I don't know why they chose to do it that way. I think that ultimately it gets us to the right place and
Right.
explains why the rings are important, which frankly, the more I thought about why those rings are important, even in Tolkien's books,
Yeah.
it was like, you know, they don't, it's not something Tolkien really fully developed. And this actually kind of completes that thought almost.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you brought that up, only because it was one of those things where you're looking at it as, you know, they made this whole thing up where they didn't need to at all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But for their story, it does kind of tie some things up in a
Yeah.
way that's very neat without leaving questions to it. As well as this is a place of myth and legend.
Right.
Everything is a myth and legend. It doesn't necessarily mean that's where Mithril came from. So
Right.
it can be brushed off as just a myth. But as far as the story goes, I mean, it's, you know, it really does give them an avenue to
Right.
tie things up to where it's not changing bigger things.
Mhm.
Right. And it could be that this is just a myth of where Mithril might have come from.
Right.
Like, there are plenty of other things of power in this world. Like,
Mhm.
you know, it's like, maybe that was true, maybe it's not.
Mhm.
But
And it does also, I feel like, give a little bit of like, it sort of ties up, why is the Balrog hanging out the bottom of the Mithril deposit?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also, I think it gives a little bit of credence to Sauron's interest in it, because he wants the light,
Right.
but he wants the dark too.
Mhm.
Right.
And that's really how they've spun him. Like, he wants the light. He, you know, when Morgoth is gone, I can feel the light of the one again.
Mhm.
He wants it, but he wants it on his terms.
Mhm.
So I thought that was, and honestly, in spite of the fact that I was like, why are they making up this? Like, why? I was just, why would they do that thing?
Mhm.
You know, but as the more I thought about it, I was like, I did buy it. I bought it enough that I spent several hours
Right.
digging through all the things trying to figure out where that story came from, because I was
Right.
convinced it had to be some obscure reference from some weird, far off, either Norse story
Mhm.
that they had kind of adapted, because that's where Tolkien got a lot of his influence from,
Mhm.
or that it was from some like footnote in the Unfinished Tale somewhere. I bought
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I bought it as a story that Tolkien wrote, or that came from the same places that Tolkien drew his inspiration from.
Right.
Mhm.
So the fact that they totally fabricated it, and I'm not.
Well, I'm still curious to find out. I really hope they do something like Disney Plus does with a lot of stuff and does do a making of
Mhm.
Right.
series, because we're starting to hear more and more and more about how involved Simon Tolkien, who is Christopher Tolkien's oldest son. He's the current executor of the estate. And we're starting to hear more and more about how involved he was
Yeah.
in this process, and how involved the estate was in deciding how to best condense the timeline.
Right.
And knowing that that's happening does make me feel better about the way they've gone about some of those things.
Right.
The only gripe I'm really left with, there's only two major departures from the Legendarium, and it's where does Mithril come from, and
Right.
then the compression of the timeline, which I
Yep.
don't think there was any way around.
No, and they did it in a clever way. It's funny how listening to how we kind of approached this episode 1 and 2, and being like, the timeline, this time frame being just squished into a,
Mhm.
thousands of years crushed into a itty bitty little box, but then how we're coming about to now, it made sense to, in a workable way, to give you a full story of the rise of Sauron, and how everyone fits into that.
Mhm.
That they're really doing a decent job with the time crunch. I mean,
Mhm.
the people that have problems with the thousands of years make sense, and I can respect that. But at the same time, there's no possible way to follow lore specific time frames for anything that was
Yeah.
going to go on
The
without
whole-
a time jump halfway through, at least halfway through every episode.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then
So-
you're going to be lost.
Right. You get into too many time jumps and it's going to be a mess. And
It'll
I
be The
haven't
Witcher
watched.
season 1.
Yeah, which if you weren't familiar with that stuff, it was hard to follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the time. The time jumps would have been a mess, and I'm still like, the biggest problems I have are still because of the compression of time. But again, the only way around it was something. Did y'all see the stuff that came out this week about Amazon wasn't the only one that went and
The
pitched?
Netflix
That
idea of
Netflix wanted to do a MCU
MCU.
telling of it,
It
where
offended the estate.
oh yeah, and I don't know exactly what they meant by that. Now I can see a way that you could tell all these characters' stories independently of each other, and
Right.
then have a big movie that weaves it all together.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, that's not better than the time compression. That's just a different kind of mess. And then depending on what they went by Marvel-esque, because I just loved, it was like, I don't remember what it seemed like. It was like that they were horrified by Netflix's pitch, and it was like,
Wow.
That's the estate did not seem keen on rectifying this new adaptation. They seemed even less impressed with Netflix's suggestion of doing interconnected universes with an Aragorn show, a Gandalf show, which would create shared universes. And an insider reportedly said that that they took the Marvel approach, and it completely freaked out the estate.
Yeah.
They wanted to have all of these different universes and have, we'll do this over here and that over here and this over here, and we'll create Gandalf is now Iron Man, and Yeah, get out of here. Like this. No,
Yeah.
I'm glad that the estate got freaked out because
Yeah.
that would be much worse.
Oh yeah. Now that being said, there are characters, and I really think the reason the estate didn't sell the rights to the whole Silmarillion is
Right.
so that if they do get a good pitch for a Baron and Luthien story,
Right.
or any other number of characters, there are tons of. I mean, you could do a Glorfindel series, so you can come in and do so that they can sell. I mean, they are doing the battle or the Ride of the Rohirrim or Battle of the Rohirrim or whatever, which is going to be the Helm Hammerhand
Right.
story, and so that was obviously sold separately from. And if you give Amazon the rights to the whole thing, then suddenly you find yourself not able to work on other projects.
Right.
Because Amazon's not going to work on more than one at a time, and it gives you other.
It gives you options, and as well as it gives you an idea of what's going to happen with what they're going to do with 5 seasons of 5 seasons of the Rings of Power, and they're interested in going further with different aspects of the Silmarillion or anything else within this universe. They can see what Amazon was willing to put into it, dropping over $1 billion in production, and maybe they are the ones to keep with the rights to go further.
Yeah. So what else? What else do we need to cover before we wrap up?
Okay, quick. So this is like not really relevant to anything except for. So here's another question. I don't know that it's important, but it's I've been thinking about it. So that armor that they give Galadriel and Numenor is like almost exactly the same armor that we see Finrod wearing in that battle sequence.
Right.
They straight up got elvish armor stowed somewhere in that city.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
Like whose is it? And so then here's my headcanon. I'm like, is it, or are we seeing them pulling out Elros's armor? It's
yeah.
I don't know. So that was my other tangent, because I didn't rewatch everything, because honestly, like the Harfoot stuff is sweet and all, but I was like, this is not relevant to like it's you could pretty much that will take too long. Let me sum up. You can pretty much sum that up in about 5 minutes.
Right.
And like I can appreciate it for the kind of.
Oh, it's cute. And the parent inside you tugs at your heartstrings when you're seeing your daughter saying that she's leaving to go on, so that there is that side of it. Other than that, it's just goofy hobbits, man. There's
but so because when I rewatched the first, I don't know, 3 episodes or so, or at least parts of them, and I was like, wait a second, that's Galadriel's armor. So then I was all like, well, why do they have Noldoran armor just chilling on Numenor?
Right.
Whose is it? Where did it come from?
Well, that was in the beginning before the show even aired, was a lot of the bigger sites were saying that, there's Guy Ladriel wearing her brother's armor and, that whole thing. And it's funny to hear this because like the biggest gripe is that when people do prequels, they do it in a way to where the female leads are the ones that do everything first. And that's like the biggest argument when it comes to this show. With this show, totally, as well as a lot of the MCU, their arguments. But in Tolkien's work, the women were badass in the beginning. So it's funny.
No,
they had also dwindled.
If they had sidelined Galadriel in this, people would have had a fit about that.
Absolutely, because she was a warrior, and until the time where she laid down her sword, and now the time frames might not be right. But the first season showed her go from warrior to laying down her sword.
And I think that's going to be a really important kind of like she gives up her sword for the preservation of her people.
Right, for a ring.
And this is who she becomes. This is who she's going to be. And so I think we saw her take several steps towards the Galadriel that we're going to see
Right.
going forward.
And hopefully, the one thing I really do want to see is Celeborn show up. He can't. I don't believe he's dead. I think that was just.
He can't be dead. Like he's.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It's not an option.
We don't have. Yeah, it's. You know, there we don't have a Lord of the Rings. And if we don't have him, and
Right.
I think the way they did it is a way to where you can one off it as yes, he's dead, or you can really look into it and say they didn't truly say that he's dead. You know that there's no. They brought her brother's body back, and they just left her husband's leg.
Well, he said,
you know,
but she basically just says, and I never saw him again after that.
Right. So, you know, I think it's a non-issue.
Yeah, and I also kind of, again, it doesn't really jive with the lore. Just saying.
Right.
Like, you know, whenever I was the day I was orphaned, you know, you were there and you gave me water. Not so much.
That's not what
But the purest jackass in me aside, it kind of gives an interesting dynamic to Galadriel and Elrond, because like to her it's like, you know, this is this child that, you know, that I knew and that was helpless and sad, and you know,
right.
I gave him a drink, and you know, and so he's almost got a kind of paternal or a maternal kind of interest in him, because a lot of people were like, oh, he's the gay best friend, oh, they're flirting, oh, this and that and around it, and it was like, you know, he's you know, she still looks at him as he's the little boy,
right.
And whenever you go back and you watch it with it, it's like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, I think it all works. I think and a lot of the criticism, I said critique, started to say critique.
That's giving it too much credit.
Critique is giving it too much credit.
yeah, let's not go that far.
Criticism. I've seen some weird stuff, and I think my favorite. I really just want to compile a bunch of the weirdest criticisms I've seen, because one of my favorites this week was, "This isn't Celeborn. This is Celeborn," and so they took the Celeborn as we've seen him in Rings of Power next to fully armored Celeborn, like a painting of him in his battle armor with his sword, and it's like, do you think people wear their armor all the time?
Right.
Celebrimbor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Celebrimbor.
Now we're all guilty of it.
Now we've all done it. But it's but yeah, it's like, do you think that they always wear their armor? Like,
the best was Nerdrotic did a shampoo commercial with Celebrimbor at the forefront of the commercial, and him, you know, moving around, and he's got the suave hair, and it's just one of those where it's, I don't know, man. It's odd. It's very odd how we attack things. And why. I don't, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of fans out there that are upset over certain things. And
there are, and I'm not going to discount people's criticism.
I can respect them.
Face value.
But they are ways to get around these things, because it's from book to film is a huge jump. And it's not gonna be taken care of like that, and as well as be right down to every letter.
So, do you think we do find out at some point that, I don't know, she gives him his glass of water and then pieces out, and then Maethros and Maglor show up?
Right.
Right. I mean.
Right.
But you know, as far as the criticisms go, like there are certainly valid criticisms here.
And they have, now that being said, they have managed to pull off way bigger seeming contradictions well so far. So I'm gonna give them credit and say maybe they'll pull it off.
No, I think, like, I'm completely happy with it. Like, leaving it all for me, like, I don't have anything that, like, I can nitpick it, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's not perfectly told, you know, Tolkien's story, but it is. I think that they stayed really true to a lot of it. And I think this finale brought a lot of it back around to the right place.
Yes, absolutely. There was a little bit of course correction. Not that they were correcting course, but at least showing you that what you thought they were doing with a character like the king, Gil-galad, that he's not the way we were presenting him. That there is that redeeming quality, and there is that leader inside of him that's
He's
saying,
like an onion. He's
Yeah.
got layers.
right.
All right. Well,
So, but yeah, that was a great first season. It sucks we got to wait 2 years to get more.
it really does. So maybe they'll get their act together and give us some cool merchandise
Right,
Yes.
in the
Buy
meantime.
the stuff.
right. All
All
of it.
the stuff. All the stuff.
All the stuff.
In the meantime, on the last pod when we were talking Andor,
Mhm.
Andrew said we have to listen to the Rings of Power score. Definitely have to watch or listen to the Rings of Power score.
I loved the song at the end.
Yeah.
It felt a lot like Gollum's song from
Mhm.
Mhm.
Two
Yes.
Towers, right?
Yeah.
The end of
Yeah.
it had that same. Okay, so I think I'm going to get on Twitter. I've got to do like a little bit of analysis so I can not sound like an idiot. But I don't know how musical you guys are, but did anybody else notice that bum 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 is like this close to being the Harfoot theme?
Oh, yeah.
It's really, really similar. Like the first measure and a half are the same.
Oh,
And
wow.
then it goes up instead of down, and then it comes back and does the same.
Mhm.
I was like, that seems
That's a little sus.
intentional.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Definitely need to.
Well, I don't know what that
because
means.
we have
but I
2
think it means
years.
something.
2 years to study the score and to
Mhm.
binge the series, which I can promise you I'll binge it several more times.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
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 We've
It
gotta
was
watch it with the
that good
kids.
for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think we were talking. I think we're gonna watch. I think we'll watch Rings of Power, and then we'll just go all the way through the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
just I'm interested in kind of seeing it as an item.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Rings of Power, go on to The Hobbit, go on to the
Mhm.
Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings.
Only the extended version of the Hobbits, though. It doesn't make any sense that movies whose biggest fault was that they were way too long.
Mhm.
Just that extra half hour just makes them so much more watchable.
It does.
It's irrational, but it's true.
When they said they were cutting it, I said it right from the beginning. I'll be the one to sit there for 4 hours.
Mhm.
Give me an intermission in between and go get more popcorn, maybe another soda, and I'll come back in and I'll sit and watch the rest of it. It's all good.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to wrap up by saying, give this show a chance. I'm not telling you have to like it because I like it, but go give it a chance.
Mhm.
And don't not watch it because some angry person said it was terrible.
Right.
Never not
Like-
watch anything because some angry person said it was terrible. I wouldn't be
but this is
watching anything anymore.
But this is the thing, and this is what irks me about the weight that people put on other people's opinions about a show. Like, I think it's great. Other people think it's terrible, but I really just want you to go watch it and decide for yourself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And don't get on and troll us if you don't like it. Like you can troll the show all you want, but don't be like personally ugly, please.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
Mean and unpleasant.
Or say that
Right.
we're normies.
especially if you were a Tolkien fan.
The thing is a lot of these like hardcore Tolkien fans that just can't bear to see Tolkien's legacy tarnished.
Right.
Mhm.
There's nothing Tolkien about them.
Mm-mm.
They don't
It's
understand
so-
this. They don't understand Tolkien's themes in the slightest.
Right.
Mhm.
If you're going to be that kind of ugly person, then how
No.
could you be a Tolkien fan?
Right.
Just-
Andrew says one day, he's like, you do realize that high fantasy fans are the Star Trek fans of
the fantasy world. Like high fantasy fans, like Star Trek fans they're the pretentious people. They're the snobs, and I'm a Star Trek fan, but like your hardcore Star Trek fans are your snobs of the sci-fi world.
Right.
In the fantasy genre, because there's a lot of different kinds of fantasy, but your high fantasy fans are the most pretentious of the lot.
Yep.
And that, so just kind of when you're listening to somebody that's a really hardcore high fantasy person, just remember they're a little pretentious.
Right. And that's why Amazon removed reviews for the beginning. That's why there's not much stock put into them, and they called them patently evil, is because how many times that critics have come out and said something about a show, and then the fans have gone and seen it and said, I don't know what they were watching, because they hated everything. So, and it's the same
everything.
Or they loved
Man,
everything.
does anybody remember The Last Jedi? It was like the glorious Star Wars ever. I mean, it's a beautiful movie. It's like it's got its virtues, but like the greatest.
The story was all over the place.
Like, what were you watching?
Right. It started with eating my entire stash of marijuana and mushrooms, LSD. And I watched the whole movie with the TV off.
Well, there you
go.
go.
It's one of those things that's like, you can't always just go by what the hype says, because sometimes, and a lot of people, and again, I think part of it is on whoever was running the marketing for this show. They were like, new character.
The marketing was a failure.
New thing. Yes. They said all the wrong things at the beginning.
Definitely.
The marketing said all the wrong things, and then the actors said all the wrong things.
Yes.
And they pissed people off a long time before the show even came out.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I think we're almost 2 hours in, and I think we could sit here and we could find scenes to talk about all night. And I do think we will probably give it a couple of weeks and see if some other people catch up on it and finish the series, and maybe I'll get back together for a big roundtable discussion.
That would be cool.
I might even, if I get enough people that want to do it, I might even write a trivia episode for it.
Nice.
Oh.
So we will get back together and talk Rings of Power again, because we got to wait 2 hours. I mean, two years to see the next.
This was such a great season too. Such a great season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that when it got to the end, I fell in love with this show in that final episode. Up to then, I was like, it's okay. It's pretty good. Like, I'm liking a lot of things. It's good. And I fell in love with this show.
I did too. I really did.
It elevated everything that came before it. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to go back and watch the whole thing from start to finish.
Exactly. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes.
But anyway, let's wrap it up here for the night. So real quick, even though I've got to make y'all do this again for the second time tonight, tell everybody where they can find you online, where your podcast is, and anything you got coming up. Kelly, I'll let you kick that off.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at The Sidebar Cantina. I run the social media for their podcast. Dave and Jason will be live tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time to discuss Andor episodes 4 through 6 and give us their take on that. You can also find me at pretty new podcast, Stranger Things Has Happened. Me and my co-host John, we've never watched the show before. We're covering it episode by episode. This week we are covering season 2, chapter 3. So that would be on Friday at Stranger Things Has Happened on YouTube at 7 p.m. Eastern. So
that's awesome. I'm behind on those episodes, but I'm looking forward to catching up on them.
Thank you.
I love watching. I love seeing people, experience new things for the first time. It's the reason that reaction channels are so popular, where people actually watch older things, but seeing them for the first time. And
I am totally all in. Wow.
Yeah. but it's such a good show. But I'll have to catch up on y'all's episodes. I think
Thank
life is hopefully going to get a little more normal around here.
Adulting is hard.
It is. Absolutely.
All right, DB, what have you got going on?
You can find me on Twitter, dragon_bud with 2 Ds. You can find all of us from the Escape Pod on Twitter at the Escape Pod, ATSW the Escape Pod. Wednesday night, 7:05. This week we are covering She-Hulk the series, doing all of it. We've got probably some mixed opinions. It's one show we haven't talked to each other about, so it'll be fun to see what we all thought individually.
Always an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And then Friday night, the Red 5 Tavern is open again, and we will be doing a one-off adventure with Tom Warbear, our DM, where the I forget from the last show.
So did I.
The Night of the Shadow Walkers. Night of the Shadow Walkers.
Night of the Shadow Walkers.
So we'll be joined with some Red 5 members, Nicole,
Charles from Conversations, Grant from Dork Wars, and Nicole from Rogue One Radio, and me and you.
Yes, and that's where you can find me.
Sweet.
What about you?
I don't like social media.
Yeah, no.
I
You can mostly find Marisha here.
Or if it's a good Rings of Power episode, she shows up in a chat, and I'm like, "Oh, I gotta watch it."
It's like, wait, Marisha's in this chat?
Yeah,
I only because I could only say the same things to Andrew so many times. I was like, surely someone on Twitter has something to say. Yeah, so occasionally, if I'm particularly excited about something, you can find me on Twitter at PPadawans, and if I'm working on a costume and I'm not on a huge time crunch, you can find me on Instagram at princesses_and_padawans.
Awesome. Well, if nothing else, I'm fixing to start building some armor here soon, so a lot of that'll wind up.
Yeah, because our children because of course our children are like, let's see, what's the hardest thing in this whole show? I want that thing.
Yes.
Oh, they're cute little deers, aren't they?
They're lucky they're so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but the condition is going to be like, we will make said armor, but you're not allowed to act like a teenager when you wear
it. So which one of them is going to be Baby Grogu?
I don't know that any of them would go in for that. I think they might be my sister's got a baby though. Maybe we'll dress her baby.
Elijah's not as big into the dressing up as the others, although he's getting more. We didn't do it this year, but he did want to go for me and him to go as the Blues Brothers.
Oh,
yes.
So I think next year at Dragon Con, me and Elijah may go as Jake and Elwood.
Mm-hmm.
That would be so cool. That would be so cool.
All right. Well, you can find me running the Twitter account for this show at @Fictionary. Drop us a line at theScienceFictionary@gmail.com. You can check out our website, ScienceFictionary.com, where you can find all the links to find all of our stuff as well, including the Parsec Fan Awards, which, we had planned on shutting down the nominations by now, but they're still open, so there's time. Go over there and get your nominations in, because the more the better. It doesn't really work if there aren't enough nominations. So go do that. And then you can find our podcast as well as all of the rest of the Red 5 podcast family at Red 5 Network on Twitter or at bio.link/Red5. And until next time, guys, may the force be with you.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.